Welcome back to Light the Fuse, the only Mission Impossible podcast that's recording separately because we have been quarantined by the coronavirus.
I mean, it's not quarantine. We're not sick. It's just social distancing.
Yes, we're social distancing ourselves from each other.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that we're not emotionally distancing.
Yeah. No, I still feel the connection.
Yeah, I hope so.
Through Skype, I can give you Skype hugs.
I'm so excited about these episodes we're going to do. I mean, if we can't be together, at least we can give an amazing gift to the world, I feel like, which is these episodes we're about to unleash, right?
Yeah, this was such an amazing interview that we did with Maryann and Mary Jo. We've had countless incredible interviews, but this is one of my favorites. I think they were just so funny and so candid, and they've had so much experience. They're amazing at what they do, and I love these. This interview is so great. I'm so excited to share it with everybody.
Yeah, so in this episode, we really get into the weeds with Mission Impossible 3, basically. We really get into it, and it's really fascinating. Was there anything that you are really excited about people hearing in this episode?
I think there's some things that I want to wait till after the interview to sort of debrief, because I don't want to spoil anything. But there are a couple other things I want to talk about before the interview.
Oh, okay.
So remember, we reached out to John Knoll because we saw on IMDb he was listed for MI7 and MI8. And it turns out he emailed us back and said he doesn't know how that got on IMDb, and he is not working on the movie. So I don't know how that started, and he doesn't either.
Disappointing news, but I'm happy for the clarification.
Yes, yeah. Oh, and also there was that great story that someone tweeted to us, or someone, I think someone was talking with Todd Vaziri, and I wonder if it was someone who worked on the movie, but there was a story about the crashed BMW that we need to share.
Oh, yes.
We didn't talk to John Knoll about it because we didn't know about it. But then we found this on Twitter, and it's amazing. So this is a quote from John Knoll from an interview that we did not do. Someone else did. Unfortunately, it's a screen grab, and I don't have the link, so I don't know where this is from. But John Knoll says about the BMW's new Vision Hybrid. He says, "We all decided that since there is a drivable prototype of this car, we would try and shoot it with a real car. And we were warned by BMW to be careful with this and not take it over 40 miles an hour. Treat it gingerly. But it's meant to be a high-speed chase, and we try to give the impression of speed with long lenses and tight framing and lots of quick cuts. But, despite the best of intentions, after the first evening of shooting, we catastrophically broke the transmission, and it couldn't be repaired in time for us to continue the shoot. And this is the only one that existed, so it had to get shipped back to BMW. And meanwhile, we proceeded to shoot the scene with a target car, and it ended up being computer-generated in a little over half the sequence. Ideally, you will never know that you're seeing a computer-generated car. It was animated in Maya. I assume Maya is a program. We started by...
It is a program, yeah.
We started by match moving our target car, and that was the basis of the car. And then we had an animator go in and put suspension squish and tire rotations and steering and minimal animation on digital doubles who you can see in the windshield. So the BMW in the chase in Ghost Protocol in the climax is fake. It's CGI in half the shots. I mean,
but it's invisible, thank God.
Yeah, that's crazy. And now I've got to go back and watch it again to see. They wrecked the prototype.
So funny.
And also, we should say, obviously the shooting of Mission Impossible 7 and 8 has been delayed. We've talked about it on our Patreon. If you want to hear all the latest news and stuff like that, we digest that stuff on our Patreon regularly. And so if you want to sign up for the bonus content level on our Patreon, you'll hear us talking about, what impact this will have on the release dates, and Simon Pegg talking about it on another podcast. We break that down, and Simon Pegg also tells a funny story about wearing gloves in Fallout, forgetting to wear his gloves in Fallout, which costs $100,000 to fix, and we talk about that as well on that Patreon episode. And we also, talk about if they're shooting in the canals of Venice, maybe Scuba Luther's going to be part of it. This is all stuff that we talk about in this in that Patreon. So if you want to hear that kind of stuff, then you should sign up for that. That's I think that's it for now.
All right, let's throw it over to the interview, and we'll be back afterwards to wrap things up. so excited to
Yeah.
have you guys here. I mean, this has been a long time. I mean, this is big for us. This is huge.
Oh
So
my
thank you, first of all. For
So is
coming
it
on.
your Mission Impossible?
This will be almost our
Crazies.
100th episode.
Yeah,
Really?
we're
And
close
it's
to 100
always
now.
on Mission Impossible?
Always.
We're doing
Yeah.
a podcast?
Yes.
What do you think we were doing?
Just
Mary
doing
Jo
an
is
interview.
just joining us.
I'm just out of it.
Well,
My
we always end up
God.
talking with people about the other parts of their career as well because we're always excited about. So we'll get to that eventually, but we always focus.
Mission up.
It's about
Mary Jo, we're doing a podcast.
Yeah.
Do you edit it?
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
we will.
thank
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
I just want to introduce you to Mary Jo. Mary Jo, we're here today doing the Mission Impossible 3 podcast.
Yes.
You need to introduce me to the world.
So you guys worked on Mission Impossible 3. It's JJ's first movie, and you had worked with him before. I mean, what was that experience like for both of you? Was it a huge leap? Were you editing it just like anything else? I mean,
you both worked on
Alias.
Alias before, but had you not edited together before? Was this the first thing you did together?
Well,
This was about the same, really.
it's I mean, we edited Alias, so if you look at Alias and as one long spy drama, we worked together for 3 years.
But you did separate episodes, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but the thing is that we actually did, in a way, separate episodes on Mission Impossible 2 because we divide up the movie. That's the
Okay.
way, as far as Maryann and I, that's the way we have always worked.
Oh,
really?
We've never cut in each other's sequences. So in a way, it was kind of the same. Even though I suppose on Mission we talked a lot more.
Right.
About, like, we didn't actually talk about each other's Alias episodes really very often at all. I mean, just in passing because... I don't know. It just didn't
Well, there was
develop that
never
way.
any time.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
true.
I was finishing, you were beginning.
Right, yeah.
And
The
vice
episodes
versa.
didn't really, the timing didn't cross over so much so that you're like sitting around having time to chat about each other's
Right.
work and
Right.
episodes.
But we
Would
did
you
talk
separate
about
it
Mission
into-
Impossible a lot.
A lot.
You know, we
Would you
talked
separate
about-
it into reels or was it scenes? I mean, how big were those chunks that you were separating?
Sequences.
Okay.
So, films usually, a lot like Mission Impossible, are Act 1, 2, and 3, and they're usually in sequences. Like, in 3, there was the whole Italy sequence, and then there was...
Well, Italy and the bridge, we kept that together.
right.
I
and
remember
then-
how we did it. It was the opening, I think mine was the opening through...
Italy, I thought.
No.
Oh, no, because I
you
took
took
over
Berlin.
the middle.
You took over
Oh, right.
Berlin.
So opening, and then I did that big sequence where they rescue
Carrie
Lindsay.
Russell.
Carrie
Carrie
Russell,
Russell.
Lindsay, and then you went in and did the
Italy and the bridge, and
we
then
did it
you,
in
we
sequences.
did it in chunks, like like 5 or 6 big chunks. But that was also the first time that we did it, and I think that we realized after that we had made too many pieces, right? Didn't we start making pieces,
bigger.
bigger,
Yeah, then we did bigger and bigger, and
On subsequent projects, you would do bigger chunks.
bigger pieces,
Right.
yeah.
yeah.
And you'd never do passes on each other's work.
Never.
No, it really wasn't necessary, to be honest, because we then would get together and all talk about it, and then we knew what we had to go back
It's
and
not
do.
that you
and-
couldn't.
Right.
We all discussed. I mean, JJ, Maryann, and I would all talk about the movie and talk about what needed to be done. But it's just better to make your changes in your own work. You know what you're doing. I mean, you know what you're trying to achieve in that. Besides what anyone else is aware of. I mean, the psychological or emotional or whatever. Not that anybody else isn't aware of it, but you know how you did it. And it's just better to make your changes yourself so you can preserve that while you're pleasing other people.
Right. So would it be, so let's say the opening sequence, you put that together, Mary Jo, and then, so would you all screen it together and talk about it? I mean, how would that process go, the discussing of it?
We wouldn't do it at that stage.
Okay.
That's just when I was putting it together. It would be later on when we were talking about the movie as a whole or watching a reel as a whole or something like that.
And by the way, we both watched dailies together.
Yeah.
So we'd watch all the
Always.
dailies together, talk about the dailies.
Right.
Endlessly.
Talk about what we thought we had, what we thought we didn't have, that kind of thing. And,
That's still the same process today?
well, you mean
Well, you haven't-
between
Well, but
us?
I
You
didn't
did Force
do-
Awakens together, right?
did.
We
Force
did. That was
Awakens.
the same
That was the last
process
time we
on
worked together.
Force Awakens, yes.
Okay.
And then, yeah. But it changes on every film.
Right.
It depends on the demands of the film.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Yeah. just to explain, when you were saying about then do you sit down and watch that cut and does everybody talk about it? The fact is, JJ doesn't really look at stuff generally, at least back then. I don't know how you guys did it on the last movie, but generally he just let us do our thing. Mm-hmm. So we wouldn't be talking about things until much later on, just to make that point. He really would. It was one of the fun things about working with him was kind of being left alone with the film.
Right.
That's awesome. Well, a lot of people have talked about how similar it is to Alias. And was it always structured like... Because so many of the Alias episodes start kind of in media res and they go back and you see how Sydney got tied up or whatever it is. I mean, was that always a part of the structure or is that something that you guys discovered in editing?
I was gonna say it probably is one of the reasons Tom was so attracted to hiring JJ to do it.
That's exactly right. That's why he wanted JJ.
Right.
He wanted to humanize.
Yeah, he wanted an emotional version of Mission Impossible, which JJ gave him, with the sort of family drama clash with your, business drama.
Right.
And that's exactly what Alias was. It was a complicated family, and I'm working for the CIA, not CIA, maybe CIA. I don't know.
Right.
And my friends don't know who I am.
And I'm lying to my friends and family, just like what's his name? Remember that scene? Well, I did that. I don't know. They did that Italy sequence in the basement when they're fitting the mask on Ethan,
right.
The Owen Davian mask. And what's his name? Ving Rhames says to him, "You'll end up lying to everybody you've ever loved." And
right.
It's exactly what happened to Sidney Bristow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting because. Obviously, he had been on Steven Spielberg's radar for a long time and many other people's radar for a long time. He's a very successful writer, JJ. So I think they had originally come to him to write War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds, yeah.
And he didn't want to do it at that time. He had a lot of his own stuff, and you'd have to ask him what his reasons were. But But I think Mission Impossible really appealed to him, and Tom, I think, made a personal plea on behalf of it. And we talked about this many times about how much it's our favorite Mission Impossible because we both.
We're gonna ask you to rank them later, so yeah, we'll keep
I don't know that yet. Because I just think it has such an emotional component, and it makes it. It's nice to see Ethan Hunt in that situation. Whether that is big at the box office, that's
right. Well, did you watch the earlier movies or any of the episodes of the show for any reference or anything?
Well, I don't know about reference, but I had been a fan of the show.
Oh, okay.
And I had watched actually, I never did see 2. Did you see 2?
I did see 2.
I saw 1, though.
A lot of motorcycles.
Yeah, somebody just told me
There
it
are.
was like all this, and I had seen that sequence on the cliff, and it was just like, I just didn't really... the thing is about doing this Mission Impossible is that it has what attracted me to editing in the first place. It had the emotional component. I just really wouldn't want to do a movie like some of the other ones struck me as cold, a little bit cold, and
right.
I wouldn't really want to do that. I'm just not really interested in doing projects like that. I prefer things that have a real psychological and emotional element, and I think all of JJ's work has that. All of it. No matter what planet you're on, it always has the human element.
Right. Well, it's interesting too because that 3 kind of serves as a branching off point for the franchise and has influenced the movies since.
Right, because he's always had a wife after that.
Right, and that's always been a complication.
Explains the man.
Right.
So, and there, I guess, what was it in 5? Is it 5 where he goes back and sees her and she's in that?
Oh, and 4 at the wharf.
No, that's 4,
right.
and then in 5,
in the latest one.
or
she's in the
6.
medical
where
camp.
she's in the medical camp.
Yeah, 6.
So you've always got that element of, he's connected. So JJ's responsible for emotionally connecting Ethan to the world.
Right.
And I don't think, and in the show for sure, it was procedural.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was the thing that.
Only procedural.
Yeah.
But for some reason, it didn't bother. I mean, I guess it's a much shorter format for one thing.
Right.
And
Yeah, it seems like that was a rule that Bruce Geller had, the creator of the old show, is that he didn't want them to get into personal lives stuff.
Right.
And it was more about the emotion between the team members.
Right.
It just seems like they've settled into now more as well with Benji and Luther. And like it's the same team.
Right.
Well,
It's true.
and
It
I-
takes the place of a family.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I think the Brian De Palma version, the first movie, tried to bring that back, where he kind of wiped out the whole crew, and that was meant to sort of shock, and so a new team could come in, and that's an interesting method of rebooting a series.
Yeah. How involved was Tom? Because we've heard stories we've interviewed Paul Hirsch and Eddie, obviously. And they both have great stories about what Tom has contributed. And do you guys remember anything?
He was so happy.
Really?
He really did not come around that much. Plus, he had just met
Katie,
so
yeah,
he was
right.
completely over the moon. I think he came up. I remember him asking me to make one change.
What was it?
It was a shot of him when he was upside down in the car, and he thought he looked funny in that particular shot. And I couldn't disagree with him. It was like it was nothing. I was like,
on the
of
bridge
course,
when
I'm
he's
happy.
stuck. Yeah.
Of course, I'm happy to do it. It was no big deal at all. That was the only thing that he ever asked me to do. One time, JJ brought him upstairs to show him that whole sequence. JJ didn't bring him to the cutting room very often, and people did not feel free to stop by at all. He brought him upstairs to show him that whole sequence where he's trying to teach Julia. Was that her name? Julia? Yeah, Julia. He's real fat. He's like got the thing in his head, and he's trying to teach her how to change the cartridge in the gun, and saying just like the flashlight and the batteries in the kitchen. And I had cut that, and I'd added a few more cuts to try to make it more frenzied. And they looked at that, and they were laughing about it. And I had always loved that because it was this moment of absurdity in the middle of this horrible high tension scene. It's just so much like JJ to just then add this ridiculous. There's a lot of humor in the film, which I've always loved, and I don't think Mission Impossible before that really ever did that. It was a
yeah. Those are the first. I think 4 is the funniest one. That one really pushes the
Well,
humor.
because of Simon.
Yeah.
Simon's a big.
Well, I guess you're right.
He adds a lot of that.
Yeah,
But Simon was introduced in 3. It was
Yeah.
obviously a much
He's
smaller
very,
role.
but very fun.
He's
they
really
realized how
funny,
funny
yeah.
he is.
Yeah.
And I would say, for me, Tom couldn't be nicer and sweeter and more sort of.
very popular with the crew. Really nice to the crew.
Yes.
And
Yeah, everyone we've talked to says that he kind of inspires you to do your best work because he's always giving 110%.
yeah.
Well, I think between he and JJ, they kind of egged each other on, so it became like this: who can, please the crew? Who can buy the crew bigger treats at lunch? Who can put on a bigger party? Who can, and then they started working together, and the parties got really fun. But
I think it was fueled a lot. That project was just fueled a lot by how much they enjoyed one another.
They did.
It was very joyous.
And I think, to Katie, JJ's wife, not Katie Holmes, but Katie McGrath, was, I think that Tom had spent time at their house and kind of, it was like a familial thing. And I remember my daughter used to come when she was done with school, because school was just down the block from Paramount. And he could not have been sweeter to her. I mean, she would draw things and he would take them. She would give them to him. He would take them home. And he'd phone me later in the day and go, "Oh my God, we just saw this picture that your daughter did. And Katie and I were just laughing about it." And I'd be like, "Come on, how can you not love this guy?" And I asked him to teach me how he runs so fast. And he did this whole thing in my cutting room where he's like, "You got to get your knees up, go, look in the distance, focus on something, get your hands going, and then try to get your knees to your hands, and then just, all out." And I was
Focus
like,
on
"Oh my
something?
God."
That's part
Focus
of it?
on something in the distance
So
and
you know
don't
how
take
to
your
run
eyes
like
off
Tom
it.
Cruise.
I do. Intellectually, I totally know how to run like
In your
Tom.
head.
In my head, I am booking it right down that Shanghai, that street in China.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. But he was, like Mary Jo said,
could have been sweeter.
could not have been sweeter, was not. I think he genuinely loved the film and was totally proud and couldn't wait for it to be out there.
Yeah, I remember the first time we screened it, and just for him and for what's her name, the fabulous woman, Paula
Wagner.
And he and JJ just stood around like smiling and just smiling at each other and what about that part and what about that part? They were so excited about how the movie had come out, and I really think they thought it was just going to make $1 billion. Don't you?
Oh, they were. It was really a very pleasant experience. It's very nice to have the studio be very happy with your work.
I was going to ask because it is cut so different and it looks so different from all the other Mission Impossible movies. Was there any pushback?
Oh, you think it does?
Oh yeah. All those tight close-ups.
There are a lot of close-ups in it. And I
jury-
remember looking at it a couple of years ago and thinking, I wonder if we overdid it.
But that
I definitely noticed it.
Yeah,
But-
Scott Chambliss talked to us a little bit about
really?
that. Yeah. He was just, from his
Well,
point of
especially,
view.
of course, as a production
Yeah.
designer, he wants more wide shots.
Yeah. Of course, we love Scott too.
Yeah.
But,
well, I think that was definitely JJ's style. I think he's moved away from it.
I do too. I think it's partly because it's just for all of us. It was a first. We both had cut features before, but for us together as a group, it was a first foray,
Right.
and I don't really think that. At the time, anybody pointed out or we thought about how many close-ups there were in the movie. It felt emotionally right to us, is my feeling. I don't know.
Yeah, and
Well,
I think it was actually pointedly to go for the emotion,
Yes,
and the
right.
eyes, and the
Well, Scott talked about that too. He said that, two things. He said that he has felt JJ progress as a director and evolve his style from what the first movie was. But he also said that that JJ really fought to get all of you on this movie. I don't know if you had heard about that or experienced that, or maybe you didn't have to fight as hard to have you do it. But Scott was saying that, I think the studio was trying to pair JJ, because it was his first big studio feature, with more experienced cinematographers and all this stuff. But he really fought to get the people from the shows that he'd been working on.
and as he should have.
Yeah.
He would. Who would know better?
Yeah.
than how he works, but.
I'm not really sure. I don't know if that's all really true. I don't know what Scott's experience was, but
I think it was Scott who said it. Am I crazy?
No.
I don't know. I just know. I went for one meeting with Paula Wagner, and Dee Dee Allen was there, and I happened to have been Dee Dee Allen's. I didn't know that she knew Dee Dee, but it turned out that Dee Dee is like an editorial consultant to Paula Wagner, who was Tom's producer and ran Tom's company at the time, and I was just really surprised that she was there and whatever. We just talked for a little while, and then Dee Dee just said to Paula, "You have to give a director the editor that he wants. It's too important a relationship. It's too intimate a relationship." And I just kind of felt like, I think I might have just gotten the job. I don't know.
No, it's actually exactly what happened to me. I walked in and I was like, "Hey, Dee Dee." She's like, "Hey, Maryann." Yeah, you. And same thing. She said, "You have to give the director who they want," and she's right, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's the editing room is one of those places that everything happens and nobody talks about. You think about it. We're on film from probably a week or two before they start shooting, all the way through the release, right?
Yeah.
And that's a long time to be sitting with material, and the buck stops there. There's no you can be in pre-production, right? And then keep evolving and evolving, but in post, it's the end of the day, that's what you got. So people get pretty, they really let their hair down. Sort of their defenses come down, and it's a really important place. So if you're someone's forced on you, whether they have a ton of experience, or they know the studio or they don't, it's really a matter of how personality and relationships. I honestly believe that. And I don't think a bad relationship in the cutting room can work for anyone.
Right.
I agree. There has to be such a level of trust, and I personally believe that to be a good editor, you have to be completely honest about what you really think. And if a director doesn't know whether you're speaking someone else's words, or whether you're speaking from the heart, or whether you're really telling the truth when you say, "No, it's working, it's great," and not just blowing
Placating.
smoke.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It really requires a great and a trust that you know what you're doing. You're rewriting scenes, you're taking something that was in the second reel and moving it to you need to be able to have this conceptual mind, and he needs to have the confidence that he's got somebody that knows how to do those things.
Right.
So, we both had a pretty extensive history with him by that point. I was working on the Lost pilot then, and it was a 2-hour pilot. It was originally a 2-hour pilot. He brought Tom to the cutting room to show him the 2-hour to show him, I think, to show
Wow.
how that he could handle this long form material. You know, I mean, I wasn't, and then he said you can't tell anybody anything about this. Nobody can know that this happened. And it was like, I mean, he knew that he could count on me not to breathe a word of it. You know,
Right.
I mean, not until later on, of course, I did. But I just think, I just really try to make it a haven for the director and a
Right.
place where he can really feel safe and cared about.
Yeah.
You know?
And I also think it goes the other way for an editor. I mean, personally, if I'm with someone who, is intimidating or hard to talk to or hard to convey ideas to, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for me either.
No.
Because I have to have a chance to say, I tried this thing, it didn't work, but this thing's good in it. And maybe, or let me just have a day with this and let me present stuff to you or not. But if you don't have that open relationship, sure, you can get through it. Sure, it can come out, and maybe it doesn't make a difference. Maybe it does, but it makes a huge difference to me. And I work, and I know Mary Jo works hard enough, and there are enough hours that you put into it that you cannot come home at the end of the day and be frustrated. It
Right.
just is an awful way
Well, and
to work.
you just can't do your best work if somebody's bullying.
Yeah.
And there
Right.
are
Or pushy.
really bullying directors.
Yeah.
out there,
Or
you know.
people who just don't care. There's that, where it's a collaborative medium
Yeah.
job.
Well, we love the stories about Bad Robot, and if you discover, we need somebody coming through a door, and they build a door,
yeah.
in the hallway or something. Were there any kind of fun discoveries like that you made in 3?
Were there reshoots on 3? I don't feel like there were. Oh, you know what? We didn't have Bad Robot yet.
It didn't
That's right.
exist.
The first
Oh, it
movie.
didn't exist.
No. That's right. The first thing.
We did there was Super 8.
Yeah, I did that.
think.
Undercovers
Because we
there, but
did, you did
Super
Undercovers,
8,
and then we did Super 8, and we did Star Trek and
And
Mission
then
at Paramount.
Wow.
So Bad
Yeah.
Robot didn't start until whatever year that was,
Right.
2009.
But that was
Terrible
really fun.
question.
That was Super 8.
Well-
We did tons of little reshoots.
Oh my God, everything on the
tons.
roof.
Yeah.
Things.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And Force Awakens and Rise of Skywalker. In Force Awakens we built a Falcon.
That's right.
Board out
That's
of
right.
cardboard and had Daisy Ridley just doing this, and JJ shaking the camera, she's looking this way, looking that way, pushing things, and it's just a fake cardboard, lights coming up under her,
Right.
And
and
a bunch of what's our side's ship's name? I'm terrible. Can't even. They're the TIE fighters, and we X-Wing.
X-Wing.
A bunch of
Yeah.
X-Wing pilots close up doing this and
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that lines that I needed.
and I mean, there were times even I remember I had to stand in for Elle Fanning's dad in Super 8.
I remember that. Yeah.
Because
Maryan's got this big white shirt on.
Because the back of my head
looked
was
like
the
a
hair
hair.
that he had. So I have that. I do have a line in Mission Impossible.
What?
I do. I have.
What? Oh,
that's
I'm
right,
the,
you do.
I'm the woman
That's
at the
right.
post office
That's
when
right,
I
right.
call up and I go, "There's a package for."
I forget who it
Mr.
is.
Hunt,
Mr.
Mr.
Brazzle.
Mr.
I don't
No,
remember.
that was,
was
yeah.
Somebody gets the
other guy.
micro dot from the
Yeah.
PO
That's
box or whatever.
on the. He goes to pick up the
Oh, from
the
postcard?
postcard.
It's
Yeah.
the voice of the
Lindsay.
person.
But you
The
call
voice
to
going,
say-
Mr. So-and-so, I've got a package for you at da-da-da-da post office.
And JJ has a line too that Joey's Pizza is JJ's.
Yeah.
Remember
Oh,
when-
really?
Yeah, that's JJ.
So, yeah.
Wow,
Stuff
editors
like
and
that.
actors. I mean, this is a,
For
a big
years.
I'm more of a writer. I've written, if I had it's like $100 for every line of ADR I've written.
The job of editor also extends to other parts of post as well, supervising and creative input, I assume, for music and sound and everything like that. What's the process like with Giacchino? You had obviously worked with him before.
Oh,
on
yeah.
Alias.
Oh,
and-
Michael's easy.
and
Michael's.
do you temp? Do you use temp music?
We do.
We do, yeah.
And was it his or was it from other things? Do you remember what you used?
I remember I used
Did you use the previous Mission movies there at all, like for the theme or anything like
They
that?
don't think, I think we
I
tried them, but
think
they
we
didn't really
yeah.
fit that film.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember exactly what we used. We got a temp music editor in, I think, at one point.
I know I used
and then
some
Michael.
Hans Zimmer but then
Probably,
who doesn't?
yeah.
And then
Hans Zimmer from Mission 2 or just Hans Zimmer from something
no,
else?
it was from something else. Something from
His Mission 2 score is very specific.
Yes, it was something. It was from. What
does that mean?
Chris
It's
Nolan
like
films
electric
from
guitar.
Batman.
From Batman.
It's a lot of it's very early 2000s,
That is very
late 90s,
I
70s.
think maybe I better check into this film. That sounds like such a trippy idea.
It is a trippy film.
It's
It's
pretty
very-
it's the biggest outlier in the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
for
what I
sure.
figured. And followed by us.
But it has some really cool stuff in it.
It has very cool
John
sequences,
Woo's an
but
amazing director, and there's some really cool things. in
Yeah,
it.
it's very actiony. It's never
I,
stops.
that's what
Yeah.
I
And it's-
understand.
There's a lot of brooding.
Yes, not
A lot of
much,
glaring.
Like
We
yeah.
think there's a homosexual subtext too, but we might be reading into that.
I'd have to watch it again.
Yeah, watch it.
to-
Keep that in mind when you
I am
watch it. Yeah.
psyched.
Might
Well, the
be
villains,
great.
there's a little North by Northwest element to it with the villains. It's kind of like Martin Landau and who is it? James Mason
Yes.
in North by
In North by
Northwest.
Northwest?
The two villains that kind of have a similar dynamic.
You guys are notable for having the shortest. I mean, it's not really even a title sequence. It's sort of like a few cards. But did you ever talk about doing the full? No.
I think Marty, our visual effects editor, kind of was playing around with something. Didn't he kind of come up with that concept?
We know that those
JJ wanted
sparks
something-
were shot by, I think, JJ's unit or something.
Yeah,
Because
I
they
think
reused
that was
them,
all. I
some
think that
other-
was all done in the cutting room. I don't honestly. Do we have a title sequence? Is somebody
Sorta.
credited as title sequence?
Did Kyle Cooper come? No.
No, I'm not sure who did it. There is somebody.
We maybe did it in the cutting room, and then it was redone.
And then
by
I
a
think that's
title-
what we did.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
we conceptualized it. I remember looking at photographs of different
Yeah,
sparks. And
he
how it
wanted.
would
He.
go.
I think it was JJ's concept, and then Marty kind of.
Because it's over
Help
so
work it.
quick.
It's the
Yeah.
shortest one in the series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he wanted end credits.
Yeah, he
no,
did.
it didn't. It went through the opening sequence. The credits go through.
They go through the party.
but the actual-
the engagement
right.
party. The
Yeah,
credits
yeah.
continue the
So
engagement party.
Okay.
But I think
they
it's
are
just
all
the
front
actors
credits. Just
that
that
are
front,
for the
yeah.
dedicated title
I think he
sequence
just,
of music.
it's very JJ-like to want something punchy like that
Yeah.
and catch your eye and just like fuse over. I could see that.
All right. Well, that was it. Part one with Maryann Brandon and Mary Jo Markey, two amazing women and true artists, I feel like.
Yeah.
Love their candor, you know.
It was so great to hear. I mean, they talked about, again, we brought up the close-ups in MI3, and Mary Jo was saying that she rewatched recently and felt like maybe they had overdone it. So we're not crazy in thinking that. And but I also think they gave a really good reason for why there are so many close-ups, which was nice. You know, because they were talking about the emotion of MI3 and how it was important to really get in there and see faces for that.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. I also love that Maryann can run like Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty amazing.
She didn't teach us, though, sadly.
Yeah, I mean she did describe it, but I feel like I need like a hands-on lesson.
Yes. Someone will teach us how to run like Tom Cruise at some point. I feel like that's in the cards. But
Hopefully Tom himself.
yeah, I mean that was an amazing conversation and a you know, we love editors on this show, obviously, and Eddie is one of our favorite people in the world. So it was great to get another kind of perspective on that. Obviously, Paul Hirsch gave us great insight, but
Yeah, and you know we've now talked to the editors of all the movies except for MI2.
oh wow, now we really need to get Stuart on the show.
Yeah, I mean, and MI2 had a lot of editors, so we could get any one of them or all of them, hopefully.
You tell them all that they've won a boat, and they have to pick the keys up from a location.
Yes, perfect.
I think it'll work.
I also wanted to bring up. You sent me this thing. Brian De Palma wrote a novel with someone named Susan Lehman.
Yes.
It's kind of interesting that he's writing novels. It looks like it's very much a Brian De Palma kind of noir thriller or something like that.
Yeah, it's put out by this great company called Hard Case Crime that puts out a lot of really great they reissue a lot of old paperbacks. Like they put a lot of Michael Crichton's books back out in print when he was writing under a nom de plume. These kind of like sexy noir things. So
Oh wow, that's cool.
they don't do a lot of hardcover. So this is like a big deal. You know, it's a big hardcover release. It's got a Martin Scorsese quote on the cover. So yeah, I'm excited for it. We've talked about maybe doing like a Light the Fuse book club on Patreon. So maybe look for that in the coming months.
Yeah, we gotta get
so
that
I think
book.
this would definitely have to be included, right?
Yeah, for sure. I also wanted to bring up, last week we talked about the novelizations, and we got that tip from James Swallow, and I neglected to say that about, because the Mission Impossible novelization had 2 sequels that maybe came out. If anybody's found those, please let us know. But James Swallow tipped us off on that, and I didn't realize this at the time when we recorded. We needed to point it out that James Swallow actually does novelizations for a living, which is pretty cool.
Oh wow!
And he has a book that just came out called Nomad. I think it's his first novel. It's a novel he wrote that's not a novelization, which is really cool.
That's really cool.
But I just wanted to bring that up. And I don't know, should we talk about our upcoming episodes? Because we've got a lot of interviews that we've done that are in the bank now and are pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank God, because no one will meet us anymore, probably.
I know, with everybody,
the coronavirus,
all the social distancing. Good thing we stocked up all these interviews just before.
Yeah.
Do we want to tease who we talked to? Because we talked to some good people.
I think you should just say it.
Well, I mean, next, I know we've teased this guy already. There's a guy who worked on I-3, Ghost Protocol, Rogue Nation, and Fallout, and he actually was the still photographer for all those movies. And we spoke to him, David James. He'll be our next released interview, and he was he's retired. Fallout was the last movie he ever did. He's had an incredible career. He's worked on a lot of Spielberg movies, so he had great stories. So very excited to share that interview with you. That'll be after we finish with Maryann and Mary Jo, which Maryann and Mary Jo is an epic 3-parter. So this will be a few weeks from now. But after David James, we've got a composer, we've got a costume designer, and we're still fishing around for something special also for our 100th episode. So stay tuned. A lot of really awesome people coming up.
Yeah.
We thank everybody for listening, and please follow us on social media, Light the Fuse Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And check out our Patreon, patreon.com/lightthefuse. As we stated earlier, we do news reactions and things like that on Patreon. We do other stuff too. Drew interviewed me about the movie I did for Hulu and Blumhouse, Nasty Piece of Work. And by now, the interview that I'm going to do with you, I'm going to interview you about The Art of Onward, because you wrote the book, The Art of Onward, for the Pixar movie Onward that just came out. So that'll be out.
Yeah, and if you can't sign up for the Patreon, go buy a t-shirt from our TeePublic page, or just review, rate, whatever on wherever you listen to this podcast. Just get the word out there. Tell a friend. Maybe there's a guy in your office who really likes Mission Impossible, but he just hasn't heard of the podcast. Or gal. Gals love Mission Impossible too. Let them know. Everything helps.
Yes, it really does. Yeah, check out our TeePublic page, which has the shirts. It's linked from our website, lightthefusepodcast.com. And I think that's about it. This episode is brought to you by Jeremy Dillon and mixed and edited by Luke Burson. And
come back for next week for part 2.
Yeah, thank you to all of you, and come back for part 2. See ya. Thanks again for listening, everyone. And before we go, another mission, should you choose to accept it. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. And remember that you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at LightTheFusePod, and email us questions or comments at lightthefusepodcasts@gmail.com. This message will self-destruct in 5 seconds.